So I do believe everyone should be able to hear us now. As I was saying, this is a webinar on the Future of Hunting and Fishing project. The content here presented before you is something that's been a project that's been maybe 2 years in the making. It was commissioned by the Council to Advance Hunting and the Shooting Sports, as well as the American Sport Fishing Association and the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. Joining us today for the presentation is Emily Beach, the new R3 Director for the American Sport Fishing Association, as well as Stephanie Hussey, the State R3 Program Director for the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. The ladies will be on the call with us and be available to answer any questions we have on the fishing aspect of participation later today. And what we're going to try to accomplish for you today is just a couple of things. This has been a long project coming. We want to go over the results, talk about some of the implications of the results, and then offer up some kind of ideas or strategies that you can use this information to influence your R3 strategies at the state or organizational level. ASA, RBFF, and the council got together and reviewed all of our resources and came up with some of these recommendations to help people move forward and actually take some action on the data in hand. So as we move forward, if you have any questions, please post them to the right in the chat, as you can see. If you have any other questions, Cyrus and Marty will be on hand to help us direct information. So without further ado, we'll begin. So, like I said, this was many groups coming together for one common goal. We commissioned this project for a number of reasons, but the biggest focus of this effort has been on R3. This project, like I said, is an extension of work that Dr. Lauren Chase of Chase & Chase Consulting has conducted over the years. This project specifically looked at data from 2012 to 2017, and we were able to combine that data with license sale data from other states ranging back as early as the 1990s. So it's given us this really great kind of snapshot in time of what's been going on with license trends. And together, through our 3 organizations and Dr. Chase, we've been able to bring together some consensus and develop some strategies so that we can inform R3 impacts in the future. So our project goals over the long term were to understand the changes in hunting and fishing license sales, convey the immediacy of the financial challenges to conservation that these changes that we're witnessing pose, and then issue a call to action. Some of the things we've learned are actionable topics. We can make better decisions with this data in hand, and we're hoping that through our partnerships and our collaboration, we can address those points. And some might say, well, we know data is important, but here's a bigger picture to think about it. We've often heard the term relevancy, and if you think about how conservation is funded in North America today, it's largely funded by 2 sources, by license sale dollars, as well as the Wildlife Sport Fish Restoration Program, which is essentially an excise tax paid on sporting arms and ammunition, as well as angling equipment and other sources that's collected up at the state level, national level, and then allocated to states to manage fish and wildlife populations. This is critical because as you think about changing participation rates in license sales specifically, that body of funding that's largely been reliant on these license sales is shifting and decreasing over time. So right now, as much as 60 to 70% of state fish and wildlife agencies' budgets come directly from these sources. A shrinking pool means shrinking bottom lines in the future. As well, let's talk about the number of people who are actually buying licenses versus the population of the United States. And this is a great graphic that Lauren drafted up in his original work with this project to kind of give you a picture of licensed buyers and kind of how we connect with the U.S. population or where we stand. If you look at the map on the screen, the area within the map is 100% of the U.S. population. And then there's 2 kind of circles that make a Venn diagram. The number of license sales in comparison to the U.S. population that purchased only a hunting license was 1.2% of the U.S. population. The number of people in the U.S. population that bought only a fishing license was 8.6%. And then the number of people who bought both hunting and fishing licenses was 2.4%. So in the big picture here, when we talk about issues related to wildlife conservation and fisheries management, we have to keep this in mind. We're talking to a small audience in the greater U.S. population. And our goal, if we are working towards increased participation, we'll be able to have a greater relevancy with the population of the U.S. if we move forward. Additionally, here's another way to look at it. So in 1991, there was 40 million people who hunted or fished. Now, 26 years later, in 2016, there's 39.6 million that had hunted and fished. However, the population grew throughout time. If you look at the graphic, that shows that in 1991, 1.1 and 6.3 people hunted and or fished. Now in 2016, 1 and 8.2 people hunted or fished. So think about the people you connect with and work with and how many purchase that hunting or fishing license. Over time, if you've been in the field a while, you'll see that that number starts to go down, and it gives more cause and more case to focus on R3 efforts. So for these reasons and others, we started this project. We'll continue to discuss kind of the impacts and the goals over time, but this is where this project originated. And in this project, there's different outcomes or results that we have. We got some predictive analysis. We got some state-level data looking at the trends. And we also did the scientific aspect of it, which was a review of 3 main variables that impact license sales. Now, this approach is called the age period cohort analysis. This is the scientific side, so those data geeks, please tune in. And essentially, this data provided us a way to see what's impacting license buying habits based on the timeline we have of data. So we looked at 3 different variables. We looked at a person's age when they bought the license. We looked at the period of time in which the license was purchased. And then we looked for cohorts or groups of individuals who have a similar birth years or exhibit similar characteristics to group them together. And this is kind of important to understand the data when you're looking at it. Now, 26 states participated in this project, and each state got their state-level results late last week. So you'll be able to look for these 3 aspects within your data, and we'll show you how a little bit later. But as an example, to define age, think of someone if they were born in 1988, right now in 2018 they would be 30. So that's a person's age. Age can also be, or what we're now analyzing for, is the age effect, which is perhaps, as an example, you'll see an age increase or an age impact at age 16 for driver's license data, because everyone at age 16 bought their license or got their first license then. As a period example, a period is, again, that specific year in time when people across all generations will show a change. So in 1999 in the United States, during the dot-com boom and then bust in 2000, all people adjusted their spending and investing behavior at that time. So if we were looking at like sales in a retailer, they probably saw a general shift across all demographics in buying and purchasing patterns. And we see those in hunting license sales and fishing license sales as well. And then finally, the cohort example. This is based on the birth years or similar characteristics. And for this one, think about generational effects. We know the term baby boomers or millennials or Xers. Each characteristic or each group shows certain characteristics over time that separate them out and kind of form that generational context. We can see, based on license buying habits, those cohorts or generational impacts as well. So as we're moving forward, just think back to these kind of definitions, and we'll show you how to see them in the graphs and data that follow too. And it's important to understand this because up until recently, probably as early as the early 2000s, people used to think or classify hunting and angling as a sport for middle-aged men. Recently, and if you've been in this profession, you realize that that's not true. We see this shift. People have called it the license cliff. We've referred to it in many ways, a bubble going through time. And what that shows is that that's more of a cohort approach. It's not that hunting and angling is more for a certain age demographic, but it's greatly influenced by the cohort aspect. So, and we'll explain more in a little bit. But keep that in mind as you're going forward and looking at these different examples so that when you look at your license data, you can keep these in mind. So when Lauren did this project, he used a statistical software package called R, and he looked at each of these variables and ran multiple models. And again, he found that the greatest influence on license buying behavior was that cohort aspect. So this, again, like I said, has been an expansion on a project that Lauren had conducted from 2012 to 1992 to 2012. And back then they had about 20 states participating, many of which you see before you. The difference between this project and the last is that we were able to get 26 states to participate. And why this is important is because that represents 52% of the total states in the U.S., or total agencies. And it also represents approximately 56.3% of all licenses sold in the nation, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service report of total license sales in 2017. This means we have a really great source of data to look at, and what Lauren has found through his analysis is that all the trends across the state lines are applicable from the national level down. Each state has certain trends that show up in their data, but the results that we're about to share at the national level are a general consensus and can be applied across the board, which is a really helpful way as we as an organization, as a community, and then as a profession grow and understand participation. Another thing that is unique about this project in comparison to others is the license categories. Last time this project was conducted, Lauren was only able to look at license sales for all sales. He wasn't able to break it down between hunting, angling, resident, and non-resident. So for this year and for this project, we broke it down into 6 categories. We did resident hunting license sales, non-resident hunting license sales, resident fishing, non-resident fishing, resident combination, and then non-resident combination. This permitted us to get a deeper look into the trends and better understand what's happening in fishing in comparison to hunting, and also the dynamics between the resident and non-resident licenses, as well as the combinations. It's really gone a level deeper and helped us to inform a lot of ideas we've had. So as we conducted this project, engaged with 26 different states, corralled their data, got them into the analysis, and started doing that work, Lauren spent a lot of time just trying to understand the trends at hand. And we learned some things by conducting this project, too, that's important to keep in mind, especially when you're looking at the results. First of all, and perhaps you've heard me say it before, every state is different, meaning that the way a person sells a license in Wisconsin versus the way they sell it in Florida is different. The categories of license sales, the types of licenses sold, the permissions, correct? There's a bunch of different noise going on in each state's data. On top of that, for the dirty data, the way states house data and manage their data and use consistent practices, there's no standard right now for license data. So that presents a big challenge. So a significant portion of the hours of this project were spent just to cleaning up data and understanding the trends between the states. In fact, some states have only had online license sales for 2 years. And if you think about that on a map, what you have is just 2 points in time. You can't get a trend from just 2 points. And for that reason, we had to leave 1 or 2 states off as well of those 26. But once we got the data organized, we started to look at the categories that we had laid out. And we realized that combination licenses are also tricky. That's the easiest way to describe the chaos that ensues with combination licenses. We did our best, and there's some description in the project report on how they were handled, because I think there might be some technical questions there as you compare to your states. But we treated them as their own category for this reason. And we can witness some trends that might make you think that hunters buy combination licenses more often than anglers because of the trends that present it. Take a closer look at that and try to understand based on the description in the report as you digest this. And then finally, a really critical aspect of this project and at the comprehensive level and at the big level is that just because a license is sold does not mean that a species was pursued, meaning people buy licenses for a number of reasons. Oftentimes it's to hunt and fish, but some people buy licenses to support conservation organizations. Sometimes it's to get access onto a wildlife management area to shoot a firearm. Keep that in mind as you're looking forward, and also factor in that this project cannot look at churn. We did not address churn of license buyers, which means that a group of a churn in and of itself is a group of people buying one year and then not buying the next year. Simply put, we did not address that. So this is just license sales each year. And then finally, if there isn't a license category to be bought, that means people don't show up in the database. So for fishing specifically, oftentimes the first license isn't sold to age 12 or 16, whereas on the hunting side, age 12 is that first year of hunting license purchase oftentimes. That impacts results too, because you can't look back on the youth participation. So keep that in mind too. That's one of the differences we were able to see when we broke hunting and angling apart. So that's a lot of detail on the project itself and the approach we took and the methodology. All of that to get to the idea that it can only get better from here. Managing data, we're getting more sophisticated each day. We're understanding license sales better. And the trends that you're about to witness that were the results of this project are the start of the next phase. So if you'd like to see the trend lines in person, you can visit this YouTube here. But this visualization of the trends and participation is pretty important. There was a visualization like this going around probably about 2014 that really got a lot of people looking at it. It was the first kind of visual representation of the peaks or the license cliff or the bubble moving through time. And what you can see is a lot here. We can start to see the age impacts, the period impacts, and also the cohort impacts. And I'm going to explain each one so that if you have your data in front of you, you can have an idea of what we're looking at too. So first, to understand this graph, look at the left axis, the y-axis here. This is the volume of license sales sold out of the total license population for that year. This is the age on the x-axis of each of those cohorts or each of those license or age categories. So the area under the curve in each year category is the total licenses sold. That's 100%. And then you can see on the left and on the right what percent of licenses were sold in which age category for that year. If you stack them over time like this, you can see the trends, which is the most important. If you look at the age category and try to understand that, it'll start to manifest in straight lines such as this, and you'll start to see the drop-offs. This is an age impact here on the hunting side. Remember I said at age 12 a lot of first-time licenses are sold? That's an age impact. And it's an age impact because we see it replicated over multiple years. We don't see the shift over here like that. We can tell that this is a certain period in time. This is what that driver license at age 16 would look like too. What you also start to see is that age impact is shifting a little bit. And recently there's been a lot of effort to sell mentored hunting licenses, right, where we can get people out hunting earlier. Well, on the data side, that's also a cool thing because you can get them in the database earlier and start to see the trends manifest there too. So your mentored hunting licenses are having an impact on this age effect on license sales by shifting it to the left to a younger age. You can also see period impacts, and this is a really great one to see with the animations. So check out that YouTube channel right there if you're interested. But a really good period of time that manifests in the data is during 2007 to 2009. And for historic purposes, this is when the stock market contracted and it had an impact on the housing market. So initially, we saw a decrease in sales, which is right around here. You can see that the sales decreased right here. But then what happened afterwards was that license sales started to tick up again because the economy responded and rebounded. So we start to see that shift in license sales again moving forward. And as I said, you can see this on the animation really well, especially on angling, and you can check that out. Then finally, if you want to look for cohort effects, that's that period of time, or I'm sorry, that's a group of individuals that are exhibiting similar characteristics, which we've come to call generations. For this kind of shift in license sales, where you can see the mountains moving forward is a good way to explain it, that's a shift of cohorts of people with similar characteristics moving through time and buying licenses. Right now, we know that the people in this data, their ages are, they were born in 1960 to 1980. It's about a 20-year cohort. And they're making their way through the license sales and in purchasing behavior. And what we know is that the edge of that cliff is going to start to greatly impact licenses around 2024. So when people start to say in 2024 we'll see the great impacts of shifting license sales, that's what they mean. That big bump, that big chunk of license sales, the majority of them, will start to greatly decrease in 2024, 2025. So a big kind of characteristic of this, if you're looking at the age period and cohort here, is to remember that participation in hunting and fishing is not dictated by age, which we can see, right? The age impact here, we don't see that everywhere across the data. It's impacted by the cohort moving through time. We know we have one defined cohort. We think we could have another cohort coming forward, potentially in like the millennial area. However, they don't show those true characteristics to be considered a cohort yet. In time, and maybe in the future, if we conduct this project again, we could see that. So keeping this in mind, you can see sort of some of the impacts in the age and period and cohort. Let's take a look at fishing. So this is a national resident fishing license sales. And you can start to see there's a strict age impact here, right? Age 14, age 16, like we talked about. If there's no license to purchase, they can't be in the database. You also start to see an age impact over here around age 65. A lot of states have implemented what they call senior licenses or lifetime licenses, which means that once that license is sold, they don't come back into the system. So one of the challenges that this presents is that this is an age impact, but they might still be buying licenses at a greater rate than this line depicts. However, many states don't track them after that age 65 period, so we don't actually know what happens beyond that because we don't have a way to look or measure. It's important to keep ideas such as this in mind. We're constrained by the licenses and the regulations, so this is just kind of one snapshot of data that we have to make better decisions on. The next category that we're going to look at is the combination. Well, first, let's compare the hunting and fishing graphs. Because remember, as I said, the difference between hunting and fishing, we're now able to see because of this project. And we can see some shifts happening here, correct? We see that age impact at age 12, which is younger than that age impact at fishing. We also see that early on in 2000, there was a greater participation with that, we'll call them baby boomer cohort, at age 45 than there was in the hunting side of it. The left axis here goes up to 3.5%, whereas the right axis goes to 3%. You can see that the volume of fishing license sales compared to hunting is much greater. You also have kind of the 16 to 65 going on here for our fishing, whereas hunting has more of a casual fade out at the end, and people participate about 10 years longer in hunting than they do in fishing. So there's a lot of comparisons we were able to do, and they're documented in the report if you're interested in that aspect of it, because we were able to break these out. So then we start to look at non-resident licenses, and non-residents are interesting. We have a lot that influence non-resident license sales. Oftentimes, especially in Western states, there's something called a draw or a lottery. And if a person doesn't get drawn for a lottery, drawn in the lottery for a license privilege or permit, they're not going to purchase it. And so we have this closed system almost going on. We also see that license sales are much more respondent to environmental factors. So if you look at the data in front of you, you can see the age impact at age like 12 to 20 on the hunting side. And what we've started to notice is that if you think about youth non-resident licenses, they're a lot cheaper in other states than the adult licenses. So many times if people are traveling abroad and they have a kid or into another state, they'll take them with them. What you start to see over here as well is that shift. Here's a great illustration of that period impact from 2007 to 2009. You can see that when times got hard and perhaps people were trying to respond to the market crash and the boom, they didn't spend money on traveling to other states to hunt. You see it on the front end here, earlier ages, as well as on the older ages over here. So that's a great example of a period impact. And then another concept that's introduced when you look at non-resident hunting is a concept called health and wealth. And it deals a lot with the older hunters and anglers, because the concept out there is that if people can afford to take care of themselves based on their health and to pay for the doctors and stuff as they age, they can also then afford to travel and maintain that higher lifestyle. So we see that this decline is a little bit greater in licensed sales for non-resident hunters than it is for regular hunters, and we think it has a lot to do with that concept of health and wealth. And Lauren's been doing a little bit more work in that area to try to understand it better. So those are some aspects that you can kind of keep in mind. I tried to show western states and eastern states. There's a lot going on here that are impacted that impact licensed sales. One other one to keep in mind here is the combination sales, and I encourage you to look at the non-resident combination sales as well. There's a lot of noise going on here. A lot of trends are shifting, and there's been a lot of policy changes at the state level recently in the last 5 years, I'd say, that impact combination license sales. I did say earlier that the trends that manifest in combination sales are more similar to hunting sales than angling sales, which we wouldn't have known if we didn't break them out. But there's still a lot going on here, and I would recommend that you look, if you got your state results back, look at the trends, but keep an eye on them and don't make any quick decisions until you have some more time for those newer policies to take place. We definitely have that age impact here, and you can see an age effect as well at age 65 for the senior lifetime licenses. But you don't really see, you see some cohorts impact, but it gets really messy over here. So just keep that in mind and look for some trends, but watch for some more time at your data sales to see kind of what happens. So another way we wanted to help people look at the results of this data was to look at it by generation in license sales and see who's coming into which categories. It's an interesting kind of way to break it down. So one key thing to keep in mind here is that no one can agree on the generations and when they start and when they don't. I believe these are the census definitions, so we elected to follow theirs, just given all of the work and demography and everything. But what you can see on the left-hand side is each column represents 100% of the license sales in this project based on the category of permit or license type. So you have resident hunting, non-resident hunting, resident fishing, non-resident fishing, resident combination, and non-resident combination. And then you can see the different generations are a different color. So you see that there's some preference for, say, the Generation Z, which is age 2000 or birth year 2005 to present. They're purchasing a non-res combo more often, although at a small percent, they're just coming into the license buying database than, say, some of the other counterparts. Generation X, you can see some trends going on here. And the baby boomer generation, you're starting to see some preference for the combination licenses more than, say, the individual resident fishing or resident hunting. So you can see some trends just in a different way by looking at this bar chart as well. And it's time to talk about the impacts on the financial aspect. Lauren took some time and looked at the percent of decline of sales over the next kind of 5 years, 5 to 10 years. We know, as we said, the edge of that baby boomer cliff is coming, and we can start to feel the impacts at 2024. But over time, this kind of gives us a benchmark. If nothing changed, we could see potentially the decrease in the different categories based on 2017 data moving forward. And again, it's all negative numbers, so we're expecting declines, but some categories greater than others. And again, this is largely influenced by a lot of environmental factors too. So this is one benchmark to keep in mind and to compare to in future as we look at license trends. We also were able to forecast and look at some trends based on fishing, all of the categories, but looking at resident fishing, resident hunting, and then combination sales. And what you have in front of you is licensed sales in this category for the data we had available each year, right? You can see a decline. So this is for national resident fishing. You can see it start to trend upwards. And a lot of the work that RBFF and ASA have been doing have been having an impact here. Stephanie Hussey, who's on the phone with us, pointed out a really great point. And if you look, this is a trend forecasted forward based on all of these data points. You see a decline, but it could have been much worse had these upticks not occurred. The trend you see here might have been more such a trend as that. So keeping that in mind, the efforts that we're trying to do right now to impact license sales and trends doesn't mean that these are just, it gives credit to the fact that these are just one trend, in that as we look forward, we can compare what was forecasted versus what we're experiencing and see where we are. This is a really great snapshot for us. So for resident hunting, now the volumes on the left side are changing, but we can see a shift in participation around 2005 for resident hunting national sales. And then we can start to see this like plateau, right? But because of the earlier data points and it declining so much, we expect in the future for it to decline at this rate. Now that plateau might level off and perhaps impact the trend to maybe make it not as much of a decline, but we still probably will expect a decline based on the data we have. And then finally, the resident combination licenses. And I included this one because you can see the noise in the data. You have really high sales in early 2000 of the national resident combination sales, but then you see it drop off, but then it picks back up again. This is a really noisy trend, and you can see that it's a decline prediction. However, as we look forward and we consider those policy changes we talked about, this might be the one that we're most off based on our forecast. And I included this one here because the national non-resident combo did not converge, which in layman's terms means that there wasn't enough data from the states, enough records to actually do the analysis as we did for these other ones. So we don't have the results for some states at the state level as well as at the national level for this. So far we've gone through a lot of information. And again, you can find all of this on the website, on the Council's landing page, the report as well as some of the graphs, and we have links for YouTube as well to look at the trends and kind of look for those age period and cohort impacts. We've given an overview of the project, reviewed the national trends, and offered some perspectives on the future trends. What I'd like to do now is say, what are we going to do about it? Or offer up some things that the ASA, RBFF, and the Council have kind of come together and said we can use this data to help inform better R3 strategies. So we'd like to offer some of this up for your consideration. There is 5, and they are published on the websites as well. But consider them some ideas or insights on where we might go with this data in hand. And I've called them an R3 strategy. And each one has a slide for itself. And so the first one is in reference to focusing on the customer. We have data now. This is just one aspect of the data that we have at our disposal. We are getting better data every day, and we're understanding our customers better. So moving forward, it'll be important to focus on those trends in purchasing habits, customer demographics, and much more, which gives you an opportunity to understand the customers and their needs and really start to take that audience-specific approach or target audience approach. We are trying to get them to purchase their first angling or hunting license or go again. Just that concept and that approach, we expand on those concepts in our recommended national plan as well as the recommendations for angling participation. And you can find those on the index on the R3 community index. Another strategy is to understand the current trends and shifts, many of which we've just explained, in license buying trends so that you can be more strategic. If we can expect that greater need or greater pool of baby boomer license buyers, we might expect that they have different needs than perhaps the millennial hunter coming into it. So as you're looking at your strategies and understanding them, think about what those customers might need that would be different from others. You can start to respond to their needs more strategically and more quickly, and maybe keep them buying licenses longer, keep them engaged in participation longer. Now, recruiting, retaining, and reactivating new audiences, such as women, young adults, families, and culturally diverse audiences, is going to be vital too, because keep that map in mind. If 1.4% of hunting licenses sold were purchased just by 1.4% of the U.S. population, that's not very big. And if the population of the U.S. is expected to get more diverse and age as well, we need to keep that in mind from our license buying strategies and R3 strategies too. So looking forward, opportunities to engage people in such as the Vamos a Pescar campaign, which targets Hispanic audiences, or perhaps the Field to Fork efforts that target the millennial audiences. Those are strategies, because looking at license sales, people were able to see, okay, we don't have these people buying licenses right now, but we can work to get them into the pool. So keep those in mind as you're moving forward. Third, and perhaps a very critical one, is to seek partner and stakeholder buy-in when developing your R3 strategies and plans to help increase hunting and fishing participation. As an example, RVFF, ASA, and the council all got together and helped to execute this project. In doing so, we understand our audiences better, and we can start to develop strategies together to help increase participation in license sales. At the state level, think about your partners in the angling side if you're a hunting R3 coordinator, or think about your hunting partners if you're a fishing R3 coordinator. Also think about your retailers, your manufacturers. All of them have engagement with your license buyers that perhaps you might not have just as a state agency or an NGO alone. So given kind of the shift we're seeing in the amount of effort that we're going to need to put forth, collaboration is probably one of the only ways we're going to accomplish this. So number 4, shifting customer demographics will require R3 professionals to continue to evolve the way they promote and market participation in hunting and fishing. And this is an absolutely critical one to keep in mind. Think about the percent of people buying licenses right now that fall into that baby boomer category. The way they consume information or find out about hunting regulation changes or local fishing spots is much different than the millennial generation. Much different, and we're pretty well versed in understanding those dynamics. However, as you remember that bar chart, Generation Z is now coming on the scene. They consume data much differently and engage in information much differently than the baby boomers do. So what you're going to have to do as an R3 professional and your strategies in crafting those is respond to a multitude of different audiences. You're going to have to be multimedia focused and using that kind of strategic way to make sure the people that you're understanding now can get the information they need in the way they need it. So keep that in mind as you're promoting and marketing participation in both hunting and fishing, and you'll be much more successful. And then finally, evolving trends in participation in hunting and fishing require R3 professionals to continue to evaluate current R3 efforts, to measure outcomes and employ adaptive management techniques to refine their R3 strategies. What we mean by this is you're trying a lot of new things right now. There's a lot of new efforts going down. There's also a lot of efforts that have been occurring for the last 20 years. What we've often missed out, though, on is evaluating those efforts to see the true impact they're having. A license sale is a true indication of a behavior change. If you have an effort, such as a Learn to Hunt event, and a person goes and buys a license thereafter that event, you might want to evaluate it to see if your event contributed to the license purchase. Having a better handle on that and evaluating truly what your R3 efforts are having, what impact they're having, and what outcomes are being achieved is going to be much more important as we move forward, because you're going to have to do a lot more efforts, and not knowing what impact they're having, we're not going to be able to be successful. So as we move forward, evaluation will be critical, and then responding to the results of that evaluation and those outcomes will also be important. And we've covered a lot here, as I mentioned, but something that's important to keep in mind is that R3 is a growing kind of profession. We're a growing community. We have more than 1,650 people now on the R3 website. There's much more going on with the data than just a trend line like the one you see in front of you. how you use that data is just as important as knowing these statistics. It's great if you know that the baby boomer generation is moving forward, but actually using that data and maybe some of the recommendations we just offered up and others are going to be really important moving forward. The outcomes of this project can help us inform decisions, potentially on price points. The youth example versus the baby boomers. If a significant portion of your license buying candidates are going to be in that free license category of age 65, maybe we don't want to offer a free license at age 65 in the future. So some states are considering senior lifetime licenses. Here's some data to help you make a better decision on what price point you might offer. As well, keep this data in mind, especially if you submitted your state license sales. You now have a record to kind of make more informed goals for our free efforts. You can see the trends right in front of you. You can understand your total license sales. Use this as perhaps the benchmark for future efforts. There's other things you have to factor in. You know, you and your staff know your data the best, but it's one way to kind of gauge where you're going forward. And as states are planning a lot of their state meetings and state plans and trying to understand what they're actually trying to accomplish here, this is one tool or one picture you can use to make that decision. So these aren't the only research points we can use to make our R3 strategy. The vision kind of here is a collaborated or calibrated system where license sales are mineable. You can look at that data yourselves. You have access to the data. And it's also connected to event registration and communication systems. You can understand the trends before you and you can respond to them with specific marketing campaigns and new program efforts. And we'll get there eventually. This is the kind of system we're working towards. Projects like this have helped us to move forward just one step along that pathway. Your efforts at the state, regional, national, and organizational level are also helping to move this entire profession forward. So use these results as one tool in your toolbox as you make your strategies and your R3 decisions. And if you have any questions on this, we can use the remainder of this time. We have about 15 minutes to answer them and then follow up. You'll have our emails once I send out the report here. We are also going to distribute this PDF so that you have another kind of piece of the puzzle to understand the results and digest those. So if you have any questions, we'll address them now. On the phone again are Emily Beach from the American Sport Fishing Association, as well as Stephanie Hussey from Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. And you can type your questions down in the box on the right-hand side, right here, where Cyrus is typing. And if people are submitting questions, if you're looking for the trends, we've gone through and made the trends of the angling sales and the hunting sales on YouTube. You can find them. I'll show you that link back here. So if you want to share them in presentations, you can also find them on the council's website and I think other websites that are coming forward. So there's the links right there. Oops, the system's a little quick, but it'll come up. And Stephanie or Emily, is there anything else you wanted to share on this project?
No, not for me.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add. Thanks for covering it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for being partners in this. We do appreciate it. This is an exciting project to bring to fruition. Okay. So if we don't have any further questions, Mike M. Clark from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is typing. We'll get one more. All right, we are recording this webinar. If you'd like to share it with your colleagues, you can find it on the Council's YouTube channel probably early next week. We also have a survey to collect your feedback on, and we encourage you to submit any questions you have about the project through that too. We'll post that link to the survey, but if you're registered on the R3 community, you'll get a survey link. Please help us understand what you need so that we can further communicate the results of this. We'll wait one more minute because I see 2 people typing. Otherwise, we'll call it off. Okay. The question is from Matt Harlow. Do you know if any of the states were using $1 or free annual registration to track free license holders? For this project specifically, Matt, license sales were counted for ages 0 to 100 that had a transaction on the books. So they had to count in this system and bring in revenue. So the free licenses were not tracked to the best of our knowledge. Again, understanding that each state treats those differently. But based on our conversations with each data manager, those were not included. And there's a little bit in the methodology as well, and I can connect you with Lauren for more information, but those were not. And the question is from Tim O'Neill. Is there an industry-wide messaging model coming to engage licensed buyers? That is a huge question, Tim, and I'd say on the angling side, there's a lot of messaging through the work that RBFF's done. Stephanie, regarding angling purchases, Take Me Fishing, Vamos a Pescar, that all kind of revolves around the license sale. And if I'm correct, it drives people to get more information on fishing and then to the state agency license or state agency landing page. Is that right?
Correct, yes. Yep, well captured.
So on the fishing side, there does exist, Tim, such a messaging model. On the hunting side, we don't have anything yet. There's been a lot of conversations about that and how that might evolve, but it has not come to fruition to this point. However, data like this helps us understand that there's a lot more audiences that will have to craft the specific messaging to. So we're getting there, I think, is a proper answer to that on the hunting side. And here's the link if you're looking for more information on the fishing side, takemefishing.org. So thank you, everybody, again, for joining us. That'll be all the questions we'll field today. Feel free to reach out to me at this email address and also respond to the resources you get via email. And if you have any other questions, we'll handle that that way. Thank you again for your time. We do appreciate it. The survey link will be posted today. And thank you, Emily and Stephanie, for joining us. Our next webinar will be in August, and it will feature some work by the Northwoods Collective crew. Stay tuned to the R3 community for more information on that. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.